Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is tile. Let's take a moment and review some of the definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The first way to use the verb tile might not sound very helpful at first. It says to cover something with tiles. So you can already see that we have a noun form of this word. And you may or may not be familiar with the noun form, but I have a picture in the bottom right-hand corner of my screen. You can see these little squares. You might find this in a bathroom or a kitchen. It could be on the wall. It could be on a floor. But these squares are referred to as tiles. So the action of installing them. Repairing them, things connected with that. Anytime we're covering something in this particular material, we can use the verb tile. Now, a second way you might hear this verb used is more common with agriculture and with farms. So it can mean to install drainage tile. And again, that might not mean a lot. So I have another picture, this one is more of a diagram explaining how under the surface of the ground, different materials will be inserted so that water drains in a particular direction and then ultimately out of a field or in the direction of a creek or something else. So hopefully that second picture might help you kind of envision what that is. But again, we're talking about the process of creating this system of drainage. A third and more modern way you might hear tile used is in connection with computers and different screens. So if you have two or more windows, two or more programs open on a computer screen, you can arrange things so that they don't overlap. I'm someone who uses Alt-Tab a lot to switch between screens, but you might be able to do something that looks like the third picture on the bottom of my screen here. So you can see different things are open. So it looks like a Google search engine is one, maybe a Word document, or some other type of writing in another, and it's going to allow you to maybe look or copy information from one place to the other. For now, you should know that tile is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, you need to drop the E before you add ing. And that's because our verb ends in the pattern vowel consonant E. Now, our past tense and participle forms of this verb could be made by just adding the letter D. Our base verb, tile, ends with an L sound. Even though it ends with the letter E, the last sound we're making is an L sound. And this means, because L is a voiced sound, when I add the ED ending, I'm just going to make a D sound. Right? I'm not going to add an extra syllable as I say it. So the past tense and participle form of this verb should sound like this. Tiled, tiled. Now, I don't have any phrasal verbs for us to discuss, so instead, we can continue practicing our verb of the day in a couple different verb tenses. Today, we're going to practice the past perfect and the simple future. We'll start with the past perfect. We use this verb tense to talk about completed actions. But what makes it different than the simple past tense is we are focusing on the fact that this action was completed before another action or before a certain point in the past. To form the past perfect, my pattern is going to stay the same no matter what the subject is. So in the affirmative, I would start with the subject. I would use the past form of have, that's had, H-A-D, and then I'm going to use the participle form of the verb. Okay. Let's take a look at my example sentence. The previous owners had tiled right over the old tiles and trapped all the appliances. Saw a sentence very similar to this as someone was describing really big challenges they had as they went to remodel or update their kitchen, right? And so they were talking about how the previous owners had done things, made it very hard to remove certain things and replace them. Okay, but we're noting this occurred before the current renovations. Now let's talk about making negative past perfect sentences. To do this, again, start with your subject, use had not, and then the participle form the verb. Here's another example. They hadn't tiled their fields before this growing season. This second sentence, or my negative sentence, is going to go back to the second meaning of the verb. So this sounds like we're talking about farmers, or we're talking about an agricultural company, meaning they had not installed this system of drainage. Finally, let's look at making a yes or no question in the past perfect. To do this, start with had, then you're going to use your subject, and then the participle form the verb. Had they tiled the bathroom before the pipe burst? Okay. Again, it's really common to hear or see the word before in past perfect sentences, so that emphasis is on something occurring earlier. Now let's talk about sentences in the simple future. There are many ways to talk about the future, but today we're going to focus on sentences that use be going to. Be going to is very common as people discuss their plans. And to make sentences with be going to, we must pay attention to our subject. And the reason for that is our subject is going to change the form of be that we use. We'll be using the present form of be to make sentences here in the simple future. So if my subject is I'm going to use am, going to, and then the base verb. But if my subject is you, we, or they, I'll use are, A-R-E, going to, and then the base verb. And finally, if my subject is he, she, or it, I will use is going to, and the base verb. Let's take a look at that first positive or affirmative example. He's going to tile his bathroom in a unique pattern. Right? So this is meant to suggest it's going to look different. It's not going to look like many other people's bathroom. This is his plan. Okay. Now, if you want to make a negative simple future sentence, what you want to do is start with your subject, use the form of be that matches, then not, going to, and the base verb. Here's another example. I'm not going to tile the kitchen floor. I'm going to hire someone to tile it. Okay, so this would be very true. I am not great with any sort of repairs or construction activities. So last thing I'm going to try to do is install tile or cover something in tile. And I want you to notice in the second sentence there, I'm going to hire. Hire is our verb there. And then you see to tile. That's the infinitive form. So we're talking about an activity there. Finally, let's look at making a yes or no question in the simple future. To do this, start with the form of be, whatever form matches your subject, that subject comes next, then going to and the base verb. Here's our last example. Are you going to tile the windows so that we can compare them? Okay. This question would go back to that third definition of the verb, right? So we're talking about arranging things so that we can see sort of all the open windows on a particular computer screen. Now, let's move on and talk about some words that are related to our verb tile. And just as I told you at the beginning of this video, tile can also be a noun. The noun form of this word has the exact same spelling and the exact same pronunciation. There are many ways to use the noun tile. One way to use it is to describe some baked or hardened clay, concrete, or other material that's used to cover roofs. An example of this: the metal roof tiles cost $10 per square foot. So sometimes you might hear that as someone is getting a new roof. A second way to refer to a tile is to refer to that thin square. Remember the picture from the very beginning. It could be made out of ceramic, cork, linoleum, or some other material. And it's most common to see it covering a floor, a wall, or some other surface. So an example of this, they bought blue tiles for their bathroom. Okay, so we're just referring to that material. Another way to use the noun tile is back to the farm and talking about kind of that system of drainage. So it might be something that is hollow, right? So kind of open in the middle. Sometimes it's a semicircular shape, but it's used in order to make or construct a drain. So an example of how you might hear this used. The farmer installed new tiles this winter. Right? So they're talking about maybe a section or area of their farm. A fourth way you might hear tile used is in connection to board games. And so they can be sort of flat pieces. And I've got a picture, another picture in the bottom right-hand corner of my screen. These are tiles that are used in the game of Scrabble. So this is where people are trying to make words and score points based on kind of the complexity of the word, or maybe how challenging it is to use that particular letter in the alphabet. So an example of this, you might hear somebody ask, are we missing any tiles for this game? And I just want you to know there are many other games you might hear tiles used. The key is really, again, something that's thin, rather flat, but part of a game. I was trying to think of some other games. I think Mahjong might be another good one where you might hear the word tile used. Another related word you might hear is the noun tiler. That ER suffix is telling us this is a person who installs, or you might also hear the verb lays tiles. An example of this, how many tilers were needed to complete this job? This is sort of like asking, how many workers? One last related word for us today, it's the verb retile. Now I've added a prefix, RE. Okay. And generally, when we see this in English, I want you to think again, to do something over or to do it again. So here, the verb retile means to cover something with new tiles. So it was previously covered. Maybe you take away the old ones and then you put down new ones. So an example of how you might hear this used could be, we're going to retile the kitchen next fall. Again, another future sentence there with be going to. So someone thinking about their plans for the next couple of months. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.